Millionaire told pregnant wife. She was just a phase mistress, didn't expect her comeback on live TV. A single spotlight pierced the darkness of the bustling television studio. Sabrina Hawthorne, a woman whose name had become synonymous with both tragedy and triumph, stood center stage in a long, sapphire gown. Cameras rolled, capturing every tremor of her steadying breath. Somewhere offstage, her estranged millionaire husband Adrian, once the brightest star in the tech world, shifted nervously. He never expected to see her like this again, not after he callously dismissed her during her pregnancy, calling her just a phase while flaunting his new mistress. But that was before everything changed, before Sabrina transformed into the woman the world would soon meet on live TV. Adrian Hawthorne's life was a masterpiece of ambition, luxury, and charm. Tall with sharp features, he epitomized success. By the time he was 30, he had founded and sold 2 tech startups, amassing enough wealth to place him comfortably among the self-made millionaires of his generation. Wherever he went, people whispered about his brilliance, how a kid from a quiet suburb in Massachusetts had the audacity to break into Silicon Valley's elite circles. It was in Boston, at an extravagant charity gala, that he first locked eyes with Sabrina. She wasn't the sort you'd expect to find at a high society event. She came from a modest background and had been invited by her mentor, an aging philanthropist who saw promise in her. Initially, she was overwhelmed by the dazzling gowns, the glimmering chandeliers, and the delicate swirl of champagne in crystal flutes. She had never imagined herself rubbing elbows with the wealthy, let alone standing face to face with a man like Adrian. He noticed her in a split second. Maybe it was the quiet confidence in her posture, or perhaps the understated elegance of her black cocktail dress. Despite the swirl of socialites around him, he made his way toward her, ignoring the flurry of people vying for his attention. He introduced himself with the kind of charm that never failed to enchant, and Sabrina's warm smile became an instant invitation for conversation. They talked about everything that night, her dreams of starting her own fashion boutique, his aspirations to fund philanthropic endeavors beyond tech. Although they came from vastly different worlds, there was an immediate synergy in their conversation. By the end of the evening, he had asked for her number, and she had said yes. It felt fated, almost like a fairy tale. Sabrina was smitten, though she tried to temper her excitement with caution. She'd heard rumors of Adrian's whirlwind romances and his penchant for living at breakneck speed. But he pursued her ardently, sending flowers to her small apartment in Boston and calling her each night with stories about his newest projects or unexpected boardroom adventures. In a matter of weeks, they were inseparable. For a time, her life was an endless parade of candlelit dinners, private jet trips to Napa Valley, and exclusive invitations to events where cameras captured them side by side. Word began to spread that Adrian Hawthorne, the elusive tech prodigy, had finally found a woman who grounded him. She wasn't a high society heiress or a supermodel. She was Sabrina, a spirited dreamer with an unyielding heart. Over the next year, their bond grew. She moved into his penthouse on the outskirts of Boston. The city sparkled below them each evening. They got engaged in Venice, Italy. He surprised her on a gondola ride under the Bridge of Sighs. It was everything a girl raised on romance novels could have hoped for. Little did Sabrina know, though, that her fairy tale was about to unravel in the most public and humiliating way possible. Amid the flurry of wedding preparations, Sabrina wrestled with occasional flutters of insecurity. Adrian's world was a kaleidoscope of meetings, high-stakes deals, and constant social events. His phone never stopped buzzing. She couldn't help but notice how seamlessly he navigated the demands of his success, while she sometimes felt out of place among the polished circles he frequented. Yet Adrian reassured her at every turn. "You and I," he would say softly, "we're building something real." He showered her with thoughtful gestures, from writing her handwritten letters that referenced details of their first night at the gala, to whisking her away on spontaneous vacations when the pressure of wedding planning felt like too much. Their days were filled with joyous chaos tastings for the reception, floral arrangements, picking out music, and although Sabrina occasionally sensed she was the odd one out, she believed wholeheartedly in Adrian's devotion. Her close friend, Mallory Perez, remained skeptical. Mallory was fiercely loyal to Sabrina, but she had a knack for sniffing out trouble long before it arrived. Over coffee in a tiny cafe, she once asked, "Are you sure about Adrian? He's intense. This lifestyle, are you ready for it?" Sabrina tried to laugh off Mallory's concerns. "I appreciate you watching my back, but we've got something special. He's just busy, not unfaithful, and I've never felt like a trophy to him." Still, a seed of doubt was planted. She saw the groupies who flocked to him at conferences, the executives who needed him at all hours, and the occasional lingering stares of glamorous women hoping to catch his eye. When they finally tied the knot, it was the wedding of the year in Boston. The ceremony took place in an ornate cathedral, with family and friends from both sides in attendance. Sabrina wore a lace gown that hugged her figure perfectly, and the moment she walked down the aisle, she locked eyes with Adrian, noticing the unguarded awe in his expression. For all her anxieties, she felt secure in his love that day. Their honeymoon in the Maldives was a whirlwind of white sand beaches and candlelit dinners over the water. Every day felt like a dream, with Sabrina reveling in the knowledge that they had their entire lives ahead of them. Adrian seemed happy too, though he remained tethered to his phone trading stock updates, responding to urgent emails. Sabrina chalked it up to the demands of being a tech mogul. She told herself that part of loving Adrian meant accepting the life he led, but as the months wore on, subtle changes began to creep in. Adrian, once so eager to share details of his day, started coming home later and later. He was often distracted, sometimes disappearing into late-night meetings or claiming he needed to go out of town for quick deals. When Sabrina asked about the nature of these travels, he offered vague explanations: new ventures, prospective investors in other cities, urgent expansions. Even so, Sabrina pushed her suspicions aside. She tried to be the dutiful wife, reminding herself that relationships demanded trust, even in uncertain times. And for a while, she convinced herself everything was fine, that the golden glow of their honeymoon phase had simply been replaced by the routine of married life. After all, she had vowed to stand by him in good times and bad. She had no idea just how dark the shadows would become. Clarissa Bloom first appeared in the background of an event photo. It was a casual snapshot taken at a charity fundraiser supporting childhood literacy, where Adrian was a major donor. In the picture, Adrian stood at the center, wearing his signature navy suit, handshaking another influential business leader. Off to the left, partially obscured by a swirl of champagne glasses and elbow-length gloves, stood Clarissa. She was looking directly at Adrian, a faint, knowing smile on her lips. Sabrina didn't notice the woman's presence until weeks later, when she was browsing a society magazine featuring that evening's coverage. The look on Clarissa's face triggered a strange feeling in her gut. Who was she? One of Adrian's new assistants? Another benefactor? The magazine caption simply identified her as Miss Clarissa Bloom, a recent graduate of an elite design school who had launched a luxury jewelry line. For a moment, Sabrina shrugged it off. Boston's social scene was small, and new faces emerged frequently. Still, she couldn't forget the intensity of Clarissa's gaze. That haunting, half-smile lingered in Sabrina's mind like an itch she couldn't scratch. She found herself scrolling through social media, scanning for mentions of Clarissa Bloom, but discovered only a handful of press releases. Some described her brand's quick rise, boosted by wealthy investors. Others lauded the unique pieces Clarissa had designed, pieces that had apparently appeared on runways in New York and in the wardrobes of a few celebrities. During dinner with Adrian one night, she casually mentioned, "I saw pictures from the literacy event. There was a new designer there, Clarissa Bloom. Have you met her?" He answered with a dismissive shrug. "She's a friend of a friend. We might have spoken briefly. She's trying to break into higher tier markets. Probably wants a sponsorship." He paused and then changed the subject, pivoting to a new programming initiative he was launching in conjunction with Harvard's Innovation Lab. At the time, Sabrina had no reason to doubt him. But soon after, Clarissa's name started popping up more frequently. Sabrina noticed texts arriving on Adrian's phone at odd hours. He'd hastily flipped the device over whenever she glanced in its direction. Now and then, she'd catch the faint hum of hushed phone calls when he thought she was asleep. When pressed, Adrian insisted it was just business. "You know how these partnerships go," Sabi he'd say, using the pet name he'd once reserved for more tender moments, yet she couldn't shake the sense that he was hiding something. A rumor from a mutual acquaintance, someone who had seen Adrian at a rooftop bar with a stunning brunette by his side, pricked Sabrina's heart. She confronted him, but the conversation quickly dissolved into frustration. "You don't trust me," Adrian accused. "I've given you everything, and you still suspect me of running around. I'm building an empire so our future can be secure." Though his words were harsh, they had an odd logic to them. Sabrina tried to quell her fears. She wanted to believe in the man who had once gone to extraordinary lengths to show he cared. Suspicion, after all, was a cancer. If she let it grow, it would poison their marriage. So she apologized for doubting him. She resumed her role as the supportive wife, pushing her worries to the back of her mind. But the seeds of betrayal had already been planted. And as the days went on, Clarissa's presence in Adrian's life became more difficult to ignore. Sabrina began experiencing bouts of morning sickness that worsened with each passing day. Nausea overwhelmed her at unexpected moments during board meetings for a small non-profit she served, or while sorting through the daily errands at home. At first, she chalked it up to stress. The tension in her marriage, the strange hush surrounding Adrian's late nights, and the relentless hustle of maintaining appearances in high society were all taking a toll on her well-being. But after a particularly grueling bout of sickness one morning, Mallory insisted she see a doctor. Sabrina resisted at first, attributing her condition to anxiety and an overly busy schedule. Still, Mallory's concern wore her down. That afternoon, they visited a discreet private clinic in downtown Boston. The doctor's eyes lit up as soon as he confirmed the results. "Miss Hawthorne," he said softly, "you're pregnant. About 8 weeks along." Sabrina felt her world spin. A baby. She recalled, in a flash, the many times Adrian had mused about a big family, how he wanted a son to teach about coding and a daughter to spoil with the best education. In those early, optimistic days, they had even joked about naming their future children after famous scientists or authors, wanting to instill a love of knowledge from the start. Tears sprang to her eyes, unbidden but not entirely of sorrow. She was happy, yes, but also frightened. Their marriage no longer felt as solid as it once had. She wondered how Adrian would react when faced with the reality of fatherhood, especially now that he seemed so emotionally distant. Still, she longed to share the news with him. That evening, determined to rekindle their bond, Sabrina arranged a romantic dinner at home. She prepared his favorite meal, seared salmon, garlic-roasted potatoes, and a side of sautéed vegetables. She dimmed the lights, lit candles, and played soft classical music in the background. By the time Adrian walked in, looking exhausted from his day, the apartment glowed with warmth. He barely greeted her before depositing his briefcase by the door. Sabrina guided him to the dining table, urging him to relax. Halfway through the meal, she mustered the courage to speak. Adrian, she began gently, her heart pounding. I have some exciting news. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. We're going to have a baby. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. His reaction was not what she'd hoped for. Adrian froze, fork suspended mid-air. A flash of conflicting emotions crossed his face: surprise, confusion, maybe even fear. Then he plastered on a polite smile, as though he were giving a presentation to his board of directors. "Wow," he said, voice strained. "That's unexpected." Sabrina's heart sank. She had hoped for elation, perhaps tears of joy or an embrace. Instead, he seemed detached, almost as though the news were an inconvenience. He assured her it was just the shock, that he needed time to let it sink in. But from that moment on, a chasm widened between them. Adrian grew more distant with each passing day, and Clarissa's ghostly presence in the background loomed more and more menacingly. As Sabrina's pregnancy advanced, her energy waned. She found herself yearning for emotional support, for Adrian's presence at doctor's appointments, for his excitement over ultrasound images that showed the tiny life growing inside her. But Adrian always seemed occupied: late-night meetings, urgent phone calls, abrupt trips out of town. Whenever she tried to discuss baby names or nursery plans, he changed the subject or mumbled a quick excuse to check his messages. The tension in the penthouse became palpable. Gone were the days of carefree laughter and shared secrets. Sabrina sensed Adrian's impatience, as if her growing belly was an obstacle to his bigger vision. Still, she clung to hope. She believed that once the baby arrived, Adrian would soften, remembering the family dreams they'd once shared. She tried to talk to him about going to a prenatal class together, but he brushed off the idea, citing his workload. Her worries intensified when she noticed strange charges on their joint credit card, expensive hotel stays in the city, pricey jewelry purchases she never received, lavish restaurant bills for dinner parties she never attended. At first she suspected an accounting error, but deep down she knew these charges had little to do with business. Confronting him was terrifying, but she felt she had no choice. "I saw the bills, Adrian," she said one evening when she caught him sifting through mail. "Hotel rooms, fancy meals. What's going on?" He avoided her gaze. His expression hardened. "I entertain clients. It's part of the job. You wouldn't understand. But that level of spending," she began, but he cut her off. "You think I'm lying? You think I'm cheating, don't you?" He threw his hands up in exasperation. "I'm tired of this constant suspicion. Maybe if you focused on your own projects, you wouldn't be obsessing over my every move." The argument escalated quickly. Sabrina fought back tears as she demanded honesty, while Adrian deflected her questions with increasingly venomous retorts. Eventually he lashed out, saying words that would scar her forever. "You think this baby changes everything. It doesn't. I have no time for your drama. You were exciting once. Now you're just a phase, a temporary distraction from the real business of life." The moment the words left his mouth, something shattered between them. Sabrina stared at him, stunned, her heart pounding as if it might burst through her chest. Adrian stormed out, slamming the door behind him. She sank to the floor, a wave of dizziness threatening to engulf her. For minutes she couldn't move, her body shaking with silent sobs. The phrase echoed in her mind, a cruel refrain, just a phase. That night she called Mallory and broke down, confessing all her fears. Mallory was livid. "He's crossed the line. You deserve better, Sabrina, far better." But Sabrina was caught between heartbreak and her unborn child's future. She had vowed in her marriage to love him in sickness and health, for better or for worse. Yet how could she remain devoted to someone who dismissed her, dismissed their baby, as nothing more than an afterthought? In the weeks that followed Adrian's explosive accusation, Sabrina lived in a state of slow-burning torment. Her pregnancy advanced into the second trimester, bringing along a new set of physical discomforts, aches, insomnia, bouts of dizziness. More than the physical strain, however, the emotional anguish weighed her down. She no longer recognized the life she was living, nor the man she had married. Friends started noticing her absence at social events. Gossip circulated in hushed tones. "Have you seen Sabrina?" they'd whisper. "Is everything okay?" But whenever people asked Adrian, he'd dismissively reply that she was focusing on the baby or simply not feeling well. He wore a charming facade at galas and gatherings, his mistress lurking in the shadows, though few knew her true identity. One afternoon, Sabrina discovered an envelope slid beneath the penthouse door. Inside was a series of photos. Grainy but unmistakably clear, Adrian entering a luxury hotel suite with Clarissa Bloom. More photos showed them in an intimate dinner setting at a private lounge, Clarissa's hand resting on his thigh. The final image showed them kissing, not even attempting discretion. Sabrina trembled, tears of rage and heartbreak streaking her cheeks. She wondered who would send these photographs and why. A part of her was sickened by the thought that perhaps someone meant to humiliate her or manipulate her into retaliating against Adrian. But another part recognized these photos for what they were, the proof she needed to break free from the stranglehold of doubt. By the time Adrian returned that night, Sabrina was waiting in the living room. The photos laid out on the coffee table like evidence in a courtroom. He stiffened upon seeing them, his face twitching with fury or fear, she couldn't tell which. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence roared. Finally, Sabrina broke the tension. "You lied," she said, her voice low. "You looked me in the eye and told me I was the one who didn't trust you. Meanwhile, you're with her." She jabbed her finger at the images, her entire body shaking. Adrian exhaled sharply, then sank into an armchair, burying his face in his hands. "Things got complicated," he mumbled. "Clarissa understood my ambitions. She didn't hold me back with demands. I never meant for this to hurt you. I'm pregnant with your child," Sabrina said, trembling with rage. "How could you do this? How could you reduce me to just a phase while you parade around with your new toy?" He stood suddenly, toppling the armchair backward. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. You never did. That's why Clarissa." He paused. "She gets it. She helps me with my business deals. She's not clinging to me, demanding I turn my life upside down for a baby I never asked for." The words struck Sabrina like a physical blow. Tears streaming, she picked up the photographs, ripping them to pieces in front of him. "I'm done," she whispered. "You can have your mistress, but you've lost me." She walked out of the penthouse that night, a small suitcase in hand, leaving behind the man she had once loved more than life itself. Sabrina sought refuge in Mallory's modest apartment. The cramped living space, cluttered with half-finished art projects and photography equipment, felt oddly comforting after the glitzy coldness of the penthouse. Mallory welcomed her with open arms, offering a spare bedroom that doubled as a makeshift studio. The walls were plastered with photos from Mallory's travels, vibrant street scenes of Rome, dawn-lit temples in Kyoto, rolling vineyards in Napa. Sabrina found solace in their color and diversity, a stark contrast to the monochrome bleakness of her recent life. Physically exhausted and emotionally shattered, Sabrina spent the first few days sleeping, waking only to eat sparingly and sob into Mallory's supportive embrace. She had grown so accustomed to Adrian's orbit, his money, his connections, his power, that she felt like a castaway. Yet, as she lay on the threadbare mattress, she felt the gentle flutter of life inside her. The baby's tiny movements became an anchor, reminding her that she wasn't alone. She carried a new beginning within her body, a life that didn't deserve to be tainted by the sins of its father. Mallory, determined to help Sabrina regain her footing, insisted on a new routine. "No more lying around in despair," she said, opening the window blinds to let sunlight flood the bedroom. "Let's get you out of this apartment. Breathe fresh air, stretch those legs." Sabrina began taking daily walks along the Charles River. She'd watch the joggers, the rowers, the couples enjoying picnics on the grass. The normalcy of life beyond her personal tragedy was sobering. On weekends, Mallory accompanied her to prenatal yoga classes. Initially, Sabrina was reluctant, self-conscious about her changing body. But she soon found relief in the gentle stretches and calm breathing exercises. Each movement felt like a step toward reclaiming her identity. During this time, the outside world buzzed with rumors. Adrian Hawthorne's personal life was beginning to leak into public discourse. Tech blogs speculated about the disappearance of the millionaire's pregnant wife. Tabloids hinted at an affair with an up-and-coming designer. Sabrina's phone vibrated constantly with calls from family, acquaintances, even a couple of journalists seeking comment. She ignored them all, focusing instead on her health and the baby's well-being. Amid the chaos, Mallory found a silver lining. She showed Sabrina an article about philanthropic fashion showcases in collaboration with well-known investors like Bill Gates and Richard Branson. "Look," Mallory said, excitement shining in her eyes. "There's an open call for new designers to present sustainable apparel. You always wanted to open a boutique. This could be your chance. Why not submit a design or two?" Sabrina hesitated. She hadn't sketched in months. But the idea of creating something meaningful, something that represented her resilience and independence, sparked a flicker of hope. With Mallory's encouragement, she dug out her old notebooks, her colored pencils, and found herself transported back to a passion she had almost forgotten. Each pencil stroke felt therapeutic, channeling her heartbreak into art. In the quiet sanctuary of Mallory's apartment, Sabrina began to realize that perhaps this moment of crisis was also an opportunity to rediscover her voice, her creative spark, and to build a future for her child on her own terms. The illusions had been stripped away, but in their place lay a raw, authentic version of her life, one she was determined to shape for the better. Fueled by heartbreak and raw determination, Sabrina threw herself into the fashion project Mallory had mentioned. She spent long nights hunched over the kitchen table, drafting designs for a sustainable clothing line that incorporated organic fabrics, fair trade labor, and timeless silhouettes. Each garment told a story, a tale of transformation and empowerment. She chose colors reflecting her emotional landscape, deep blues that spoke of sorrow, warm golds symbolizing resilience, and soft greens mirroring hope for renewal. Mallory became her unofficial business partner. She reached out to her network of photographers and models, assembling a makeshift team to bring Sabrina's vision to life. They set up improvised photo shoots in parks, rooftops, and even the small living room of the apartment. Despite their limited resources, passion and creativity infused every frame. Word of Sabrina's designs began to spread through whispers in local boutiques, then onto online forums dedicated to ethical fashion. Encouraging messages started flooding her social media accounts. People applauded her artistry and praised the cause behind it. It dawned on Sabrina that she wasn't just finding an escape from her heartbreak, she was carving out a new path for herself and her unborn child. Meanwhile, Adrian's world was not faring so well. Insiders leaked rumors of tensions at his tech empire. The once invincible entrepreneur found himself mired in corporate infighting, with board members questioning his judgment and his new partnerships. Gossip alleged that Clarissa was more than a mere lover. She was also maneuvering to leverage Adrian's name to inflate her own brand. Business deals faltered, and negativity swirled around him like a storm cloud. Sabrina tried not to follow his downfall too closely, focusing instead on the baby. she faithfully attended her prenatal checkups. Alone or with Mallory by her side, each ultrasound became a reminder that she carried a future that deserved stability and love. She was determined not to let Adrian's betrayal define her child's life story. Then, a breakthrough arrived. One of Mallory's acquaintances arranged for Sabrina to showcase her mini collection at a local charity fashion event, curated by high-profile personalities. Among the attendees, Oprah Winfrey and a host of influential philanthropists. The mere thought of someone as iconic as Oprah potentially glimpsing her designs set Sabrina's heart racing. She worked around the clock to prepare each garment, sewing delicate hems by hand, triple-checking every measurement. On the night of the event, Sabrina stood backstage, her heart thumping in her chest, models wearing her creations lined up, each silhouette carefully crafted to exude grace and confidence. As the lights dimmed and the music soared, they glided onto the runway, showcasing pieces that reflected Sabrina's soul, a fusion of pain, hope, and reinvention. The applause was thunderous. More than a few tears slipped down Sabrina's cheeks as the audience responded with enthusiasm. Mallory hugged her tightly, whispering, "This is just the beginning. You did this, Sabrina, all on your own." In that moment, Sabrina realized that her identity no longer hinged on Adrian Hawthorne's name or fortune. She had discovered a strength and purpose that transcended the heartbreak. And while the shadows of her past still lingered for the first time in a long time, Sabrina saw a clear, bright path forward. News of Sabrina's fashion success quickly made the rounds, not just among Boston's social circles, but beyond. Suddenly, the narrative that had once centered on her as the abandoned wife of Adrian Hawthorne shifted. She was now the rising star in sustainable fashion. Journalists reached out for interviews. Designers asked to collaborate. Retailers inquired about stocking her pieces. Though Sabrina's business was still in its infancy, the momentum felt unstoppable. As Sabrina's public profile rose, Clarissa Bloom's did too, though, for different reasons. Reports emerged about questionable finances and supply chain ethics in Clarissa's jewelry brand. Rumors swirled that she had leveraged Adrian's wealth to cover mounting debts. Whispers suggested that Clarissa's designs might not be as original as advertised, with accusations of stolen concepts. Whether these allegations held truth or not, the negative publicity was impossible to ignore. Adrian's brand began to bleed trust, and share prices of his companies took a noticeable hit. One day, out of the blue, Sabrina received a call from a major network's production team. They were planning a primetime special on women rising above adversity, featuring real-life accounts of women who had turned betrayal or tragedy into triumph. They wanted Sabrina as a headline guest. The interviewer would be none other than the respected journalist Diana Hollister, known for her incisive questioning and empathetic approach. Sabrina hesitated. While she was proud of her growth, she wasn't sure she wanted to broadcast her heartbreak to the nation. On the other hand, this could be an opportunity to champion her sustainable fashion line and raise awareness about responsible production. After weeks of deliberation, she accepted, under one condition: the focus had to be on her journey rather than tabloid drama. The production team agreed, but fate had other plans. As the interview date approached, rumors leaked that Adrian and Clarissa might also appear on the show in a separate segment, discussing their new business venture. The prospect of a collision between Sabrina and her estranged husband, along with his notorious mistress, set the media ablaze. Tabloids speculated about a sensational confrontation, and social media buzzed with anticipation. Mallory urged Sabrina to back out, warning of a potential ambush. "They could spin it against you, Sabrina," she cautioned. "You're doing so well. Why risk letting them drag you back into their chaos?" But Sabrina, now heavily pregnant, felt an inexplicable calm settle over her. She had faced her darkest fears and come out stronger. Maybe confronting Adrian and Clarissa on a public stage was exactly the closure she needed to show the world and herself that she was no longer the woman cowering in the penthouse. Despite her resolution, anxiety prickled at her. Late at night, when the apartment was quiet, she would rest a hand on her baby bump, reassuring herself that she wasn't alone in this fight. She had her child, her new career, and a growing sense of self-worth. And if Adrian thought she was still the naive girl he had once dismissed, he was in for a surprise. Sabrina could feel her heart drumming inside her chest as she stepped into the television studio's bustling backstage area. Hours before, she had arrived early, escorted by Mallory and a small team of stylists who'd helped her into a flowing, sapphire-colored gown, one of her own designs. The fabric draped elegantly over her baby bump, and the color reflected both her calm resolve and the underlying tumult she felt. Camera operators hurried around, adjusting equipment and testing angles, while producers whispered into headsets, ensuring everything ran smoothly for the live broadcast. It felt surreal to be at the center of so much attention. Diana Hollister, the show's well-respected journalist and host, greeted Sabrina with a warm handshake and a comforting smile. "We'll focus on your journey," Diana assured her. "Our audience wants to hear how you overcame adversity and found success on your own terms." Sabrina nodded, grateful for Diana's empathy. Yet she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something unexpected might happen. Rumors had swirled for days that Adrian Hawthorne, her estranged husband, might also be present, accompanied by his new partner, Clarissa Bloom. When the producers led Sabrina onto the brightly lit stage, applause erupted from the studio audience. The lights were intense, but she forced herself to relax, remembering to maintain her composure. There, in front of her, stood plush armchairs, arranged for a cozy one-on-one discussion. On a large screen behind them, a slideshow displayed images of the other guests who had already been interviewed that evening, women who had beaten tremendous odds to achieve extraordinary goals. Diana began softly, her voice resonating with the practiced calm of a seasoned interviewer. "Tonight, we continue our series, Women Rising Above Adversity. Our next guest is someone whose story has become an inspiration to many. Sabrina Hawthorne, welcome." Sabrina sank onto the armchair, crossing her hands gently over her belly. For the first few minutes, the interview centered on Sabrina's background, her early dreams of opening a boutique, her sudden entry into high society by marrying a self-made millionaire, and the heartbreak she endured when her marriage unraveled. She spoke candidly about the doubts she faced once Adrian grew distant, and how her pregnancy became an anchor when everything else felt unstable. The audience listened in rapt silence, some dabbing away tears. It was a turning point when Diana mentioned Sabrina's new fashion line. "Your sustainable brand, Hawthorne Bloom, has received glowing accolades. Tell us how it all began." A small smile crept onto Sabrina's face. "I wanted to create something meaningful, something that reflected my values. At first it was just sketches in a notebook, while I tried to navigate personal chaos. But soon, I realized fashion could be my voice. It gave me confidence and hope." The crowd erupted in applause, demonstrating their admiration for her transformation from a seemingly broken wife to a formidable creative entrepreneur. Then, the lights shifted. A producer's voice crackled through the speakers. "We have a special guest." Tension rippled across the stage as Diana explained, "There's been an unexpected development. Adrian Hawthorne is here. He's asked for the chance to share his perspective." Sabrina's pulse spiked. She had anticipated the possibility, but hadn't known if he would actually show. She held her breath, giving Diana a slight nod, indicating her consent. The audience collectively inhaled as Adrian stepped onto the stage, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. Standing next to him, wearing a glittering cocktail dress, was Clarissa Bloom. Their entrance was met with a flurry of hushed murmurs and the glare of countless camera flashes. Diana invited them to sit, but Clarissa hovered protectively close to Adrian, refusing to move far from his side. He cleared his throat, looking towards Sabrina with a mix of uncertainty and the old, practiced confidence she remembered. "Thank you for allowing me to come," he said, addressing both Diana and Sabrina. "I'd like to clear the air about recent events." At first, Adrian spoke in careful, measured tones about how businesses can strain personal relationships, implying that his connection with Clarissa was more about mutual ambition than betrayal. Sabrina listened, her expression calm but her emotions churning. Then he offered a tepid apology, words that hung in the air without weight. "I'm sorry if Sabrina felt hurt, but my life was moving in a new direction. Clarissa just understood my pressures in a way no one else did." Instantly, Sabrina felt her resolve crystallize. She leaned forward, voice unwavering. "It wasn't just hurt, Adrian. You abandoned me when I was pregnant, your child growing inside me, and told me I was just a phase. Don't you see how demeaning that was?" A hush fell over the audience as her words pierced the tension. Clarissa stepped in, her voice tinted with indignation. "People outgrow relationships all the time. Adrian needed someone who wouldn't hold him back. He has significant goals, global business expansions, major deals. It's unfair to fault him for wanting an equal partner." She tossed her hair with a flourish, glancing at Sabrina with thinly veiled contempt. Sabrina's gaze locked onto Clarissa. "I can't fault Adrian for having ambitions. I fault him for his dishonesty, for belittling our marriage, and for disregarding the life we created together. Ambition doesn't excuse betrayal." The audience applauded, many rising to their feet. Adrian opened his mouth, as if to interject, but words seemed to fail him in that charged moment. Even Clarissa looked momentarily at a loss. Diana, sensing the magnitude of the exchange, turned to the camera. "Sometimes personal truths need to be aired in order for real healing to happen," she said solemnly. With cameras capturing every nuance, Sabrina rose gracefully, one hand on her baby bump. The wave of applause that followed was deafening. In that single moment, the balance of power shifted distinctly in her favor. The young woman who had once been dismissed as a mere accessory to Adrian's success now stood tall as an emblem of resilience. The broadcast ended with the audience erupting in cheers. People in the front row clapped so vigorously they nearly toppled their chairs. Sabrina's final words echoed in the studio. "We each choose how we respond to adversity." For me, it sparked a new chapter, one rooted in integrity, creativity, and responsibility. No one can reduce that to just a phase. As the house lights came up, Adrian and Clarissa exchanged uncomfortable glances, while Sabrina offered a calm nod to Diana and walked off stage, heart pounding yet feeling more assured than ever. In that spotlight, she had reclaimed her voice, proving that true strength can emerge even in the face of public confrontation. The roar of applause behind her was merely the aftershock of a personal victory won long before she took the stage. The morning after the broadcast, the internet exploded with clips of Sabrina's poised yet passionate confrontation. Social media platforms buzzed with praise for her composure and condemnation of Adrian's betrayal. Hashtags like #TeamSabrina and #WomenRising trended nationwide. News outlets lauded her as a new face of resilience. Donations and partnership offers poured in for her sustainable fashion brand. Within 24 hours, Sabrina's fledgling line had more potential backers than she'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, Adrian faced a public relations nightmare. Stockholders grew uneasy, and the board of his main company demanded explanations. Clarissa, once the centerpiece of his new jewelry venture, struggled to handle the onslaught of bad press. Allegations of design theft and unethical manufacturing practices gained more traction as journalists dug deeper. While Adrian attempted damage control, many saw his actions on live TV as a sign of weakness. The once charismatic tycoon was now a cautionary tale how personal failings could tarnish a professional empire. Sabrina received countless interview requests, but she turned most of them down. She felt she'd said her piece and didn't want to exploit the situation further. Instead, she focused on her rapidly expanding brand, making strategic decisions to grow sustainably without losing sight of her core values. She also turned her attention to an even more pressing matter. She was now in her third trimester. The baby's arrival was imminent. One afternoon, as she was finalizing design contracts, her phone rang an unknown number. Assuming it was another journalist, she almost ignored it. But something compelled her to pick up. "Sabrina," came Adrian's voice on the other end. The sound sent her heart racing, though not with the same pang of longing as before. I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I need to talk. Not about business, about our child." She hesitated. Old wounds ached, but she also felt the child's kick inside her. "He is the father," she reminded herself. "Fine," she said after a moment. "Tomorrow morning at the Riverview Cafe. 9 o'clock. When she arrived the next day, she found Adrian already seated, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His usual confidence had vanished, replaced by dark circles under his eyes. He stood to greet her, hesitating to see if she would accept a handshake or a hug. She chose neither, sliding into the seat opposite him with a guarded posture. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly, fiddling with his coffee cup. "I owe you more than an apology. I was blinded by my own ego. I got swept up in Clarissa's promises and disregarded our marriage and our baby. It's no excuse, but I'm sorry." Sabrina listened, her expression measured. She thought of all the nights she cried herself to sleep, the medical appointments she'd gone to alone, the humiliation on national TV. "What do you want, Adrian?" He swallowed hard. "I want to be part of the child's life. I want to try to make things right. I don't expect us to magically fix everything, but I can't ignore my responsibility. I want to support you and the baby. Financially, but also emotionally." Sabrina sighed. "I'm not sure that's possible. This child deserves a father who is consistent. If you want to step up, it will take more than words. You have to prove it." He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "I will, whatever it takes." For the first time in a long while, Sabrina caught a glimpse of the man she once loved. But time would tell if he truly had changed, or if this was another fleeting show of remorse. Sabrina entered her final month of pregnancy with cautious optimism. She allowed Adrian to attend a few prenatal appointments, watching him struggle to reconcile the reality of impending fatherhood. Sometimes he'd arrive looking haggard, phone buzzing incessantly. Other times, he was oddly quiet, humbled by the sound of the baby's heartbeat emanating from the ultrasound machine. In these moments, Sabrina saw flickers of vulnerability in him, a man grappling with the consequences of his own actions. Clarissa's fate had unraveled in the press. Within weeks of the TV showdown, her jewelry brand collapsed under the weight of lawsuits alleging unethical practices and intellectual property theft. Adrian, too, faced business setbacks. Several of his high-profile investors pulled out of joint ventures with Clarissa. His once invincible aura was compromised, forcing him to re-evaluate the company's direction. Still, he clung to the hope of stabilizing his empire. Yet, Sabrina no longer orbited around Adrian's gravitational pull. She became the architect of her own future. Her fashion brand, newly named Hawthorne Bloom, merging her former name with a symbolic flourish to show rebirth, garnered recognition as a leader in sustainable luxury. Each piece in the collection included a small tag quoting her personal motto, "Growth emerges from adversity." She set up philanthropic endeavors focusing on ethical textile production in underprivileged communities, drawing admiration from figures like Oprah Winfrey, who publicly endorsed her brand after seeing its impact. Finally, on a brisk spring morning, Sabrina went into labor. Mallory drove her to the hospital, her face pale with worry, but her spirit unwavering. Adrian rushed in from a board meeting, leaving a flurry of assistants trailing behind. For hours, Sabrina endured the excruciating waves of contractions, focusing on her breathing, clutching Mallory's hand when the pain peaked. Adrian stood awkwardly to the side, eventually mustering the courage to hold Sabrina's other hand. She was too exhausted to protest. After what felt like an eternity, the baby was born a healthy, wide-eyed girl, with a strong cry that instantly captured every heart in the delivery room. Tears streamed down Sabrina's cheeks as she held her daughter for the first time, her chest tight with a love more profound than she had ever known. Adrian watched, his eyes red, whispering an awed, "She's perfect." In that tender moment, they were simply two parents adoring their newborn. The weight of past betrayals receded, if only for an instant, replaced by the fierce desire to protect and nurture this tiny life. They named her Aurora Grace, a nod to the dawn after a dark night, a symbol of fresh beginnings. Over the next few days, Sabrina learned the delicate balancing act of motherhood. The media clamored for baby pictures, but she refused to reduce Aurora's birth to a tabloid headline. Adrian appeared genuinely invested in their daughter's well-being, though Sabrina insisted on setting clear boundaries. They would co-parent, but she needed space to heal emotionally and continue growing her brand without relying on him. In time, life fell into a new rhythm. Sabrina found a homey apartment of her own, a bright space filled with plants and sunlight, close enough so Adrian could visit Aurora regularly, yet far enough to maintain her independence. Each day brought new challenges, midnight feedings, last-minute design deadlines, and a baby who quickly learned to enchant the world with her gummy smiles. And so, the young woman Adrian, once labeled just a phase, became a formidable figure in her own right, a mother, a successful designer, a beacon of hope for others facing heartbreak. She had proved that even the most devastating betrayal could be transformed into strength, creativity, and compassion. Her story, once defined by a man's dismissal, now stood as a testament to her enduring spirit. A life shattered can become the foundation of something extraordinary. Sabrina's journey proves that even the deepest betrayal can spark a powerful rebirth. Abandoned during pregnancy by a millionaire husband who belittled her as just a phase, she discovered the strength to stand on her own. Embracing her passion for ethical fashion, she rebuilt her life from the ground up, weaving her pain into purpose and transforming heartbreak into a bold statement of resilience. Every design, every stitch, and every decision became a testament to self-belief. When she finally met Adrian and his mistress on live television, Sabrina showed the world and herself that her voice could no longer be silenced. Her courage inspired countless others watching from home, reminding them that standing tall in the face of adversity can be the most profound victory of all. Ultimately, she proved that ambition, when fueled by integrity, is a force far more powerful than any fleeting affair. If this story moved you, let your voice be heard by tapping the like button, sharing it with friends, and subscribing to this channel. Every gesture of support helps bring stories of strength and hope to the people who need them most, creating a community bound by empathy and empowerment.